Welcome to Recap King. In this video, we will explain The Debt Collector. This movie tells the story of a classically trained martial artist who goes to work as a mob debt collector. The job seems easy enough until a client drags him into a situation deeper than could ever be anticipated. Can he get out of the deadly trap that stalks him as a debt collector? Let's find out in The Debt Collector. The Debt Collector begins with three men who walk like superstars, moving slowly while putting on cool looks. They then entered a martial arts gym owned by a martial artist named French. One of them, David, offered French $10,000 so he could buy the gym, but French flatly refused. As if insulted by French's refusal, David stepped on the practice mat as he walked toward French, even though he was still wearing his shoes. Obviously, that infuriated French. He then challenges David to a fight, and if he loses, he will sell his dojo to David. But if he won, David had to leave immediately. Hearing French's arrogance, David gladly accepted the challenge, and the one-on-three battle began. The belt and martial arts uniform he wore were not just decorations. French is really good at martial arts. He can easily defeat all his opponents. And as per their agreement, David and his two accomplices had to leave. After that, French met a friend, Alex, to find a side job. It turns out French doesn't make much money from his gym. His students could not be said to be many, and it made him experience financial difficulties and get entangled in piling debt. So French asked Alex to hire him as a debt collector because Alex worked in debt collection after all. Alex, understandably, refused French's request because he thought his job was full of risks, and he didn't want French to be in danger. But French was in dire need of money, and he kept forcing Alex to help him. So reluctantly, Alex gave French the address of his boss, Tommy. After that, French went back to his apartment. But instead of going up front, he took the emergency stairs because he wanted to avoid the landlord who kept trying to collect rent. Sure enough, just seconds after French entered his apartment, the landlord came to collect the rent.
I know you're in there.
It was natural for him to act like that. After all, French was 3 months in arrears. French meets Tommy at his office the next day to apply as a debt collector. Tommy immediately accepted him after hearing that French was a former British soldier with experience on the battlefield. Plus, he is good at jiu-jitsu. After teaching him how to act as a professional debt collector, Tommy then asked French to do his first job tomorrow. As a novice debt collector, of course he will be accompanied by one of Tommy's men. When the next day came, French went to work wearing a neat suit like a manager. Then he met his partner, Sue, at the appointed place. His first mission was to collect a debt from a debtor named Ollie Waldstein who owed Tommy $17,000. From the notes Tommy gave to French, Ollie is classified as a debtor with a rank of 10. Tommy does sort debtors according to the level of difficulty in collecting their debts. Rank 10 debtors are the easiest, and rank 1 debtors are the most difficult to collect. With that information in mind, French drove to where Ollie was. Arriving at their destination, French knocked on Ollie's door politely. Meanwhile in the house, Ollie is shocked and frightened when he sees Sue standing on the house's veranda. Ollie grabbed a gun in a panic and told his girlfriend to greet the two debt collectors while he and his friend hid in the back of the house. His girlfriend then opened the door, and after talking with Sue for a while, she told them to leave while closing the door. But Sue wasn't someone who would go along with it when told to leave. He kicked the front door wide open, sending the girl to the ground. Realizing that Sue had managed to get in, Ollie and his friend fled through the back door. French then ran after them while Sue got back into his car and tried to catch up with them. In the middle of the chase, Ollie's friend slips after trying to shoot French, and French uses the momentum to push him to the ground. They then had a fist fight, but French was too tough for him. Realizing that he would lose, the man fled and ran into the street. But at this moment, Sue comes and crashes his car on him. Meanwhile, Ollie snatches the car of a man who happened to be passing by. But before he could move the car forward, French caught up with him. Panicked, Ollie immediately stepped on the gas, but French stubbornly gripped the window as he continued to beat Ollie. Gradually, as his grip weakened, French finally fell onto the road. Luckily, at the same time, Ollie lost control of the car, and then he hit a car parked on the side of the road. The impact was enough to render Ollie helpless. Shortly after, Sue dragged him out of the car and warned him to pay off his debt immediately, ignoring his serious injury. Otherwise, Sue promises he will come back to break his nose. After giving Ollie a farewell blow, Sue and French then head to their next target, Harvey, a rank 5 debtor who owes Tommy more than $100,000. As soon as they arrived at their destination, French complained about the dangers of their job. He previously imagined that collecting debt from a rank 10 debtor would be as easy as taking a walk in the park, but in the end he was almost shot and dragged by a car. If dealing with a rank 10 debtor is already that messy, what will happen to him when they face a rank 5 debtor? But Sue paid no heed to French's long groans. He took his knife and, together with French, entered Harvey's shop. Inside, French asked an employee where Harvey was, but before he could get any information out of the clerk, Harvey's bodyguard suddenly appeared. And that meant French had to fight him, but his punches didn't work at all. Taking advantage of the chaos, Sue sneaks into Harvey's room. Turns out he was hiding in there. Meanwhile, French had a hard time dealing with the bodyguard. It was only because of his tenacity that he was finally able to knock out his formidable opponent. But, just as he could breathe a little easier, another bodyguard appeared and hit him from behind. He was completely helpless against his new opponent. He was beaten badly and treated like a toy, but luckily, Sue came to his aid by smashing a glass bottle into the bodyguard's head, giving French an opportunity to attack him. After taking care of the bodyguards, French and Sue were finally able to sort things out with Harvey. Tommy wanted Sue to break Harvey's leg, and Sue did so obediently. Amid Harvey's screams of pain, Sue and French then quietly left. French was again complaining about how dangerous their job was in the car. In response, Sue took French to a movie rental shop to show him a poster of when he was younger. It turns out that Sue is a former actor, but sadly, French didn't respond well, saying the Sue starring film was nothing short of trash. Besides, he didn't understand why Sue was suddenly showing off his past as an actor. Despite French's repeated complaints, they carried on with their mission in the end. Next, they had to go to Gordon, a rank 2 debtor who had to pay a debt of $40,000. It didn't take long for them to arrive at Gordon's house, but this time, before they got out of the car, Sue came up with a plan. He told French to heat things up so they could take the money from Gordon. Sure enough, when they were confronted by a bodyguard guarding the terrace, Sue immediately heated up the atmosphere by cursing him. Again, French was forced to have a fight with a burly man. Their fight was going pretty tough, and it was only after exchanging blows a few times that French was finally able to knock the bodyguard down. Afterwards, French looks for Sue, who he finds in the backyard with Gordon and his girlfriend. While drinking casually, Sue then ordered French to keep an eye on Gordon as he took the money inside the house. But as soon as they escaped Sue's sight, Gordon immediately offered French some money so he would cooperate with him. Unexpectedly, French turned him down and even punched him in the stomach. As his attempts to influence French fail, Gordon is forced to hand him his safe. But to his surprise, French found $100,000 in it. Meanwhile, Gordon's girlfriend tries to seduce Sue by taking off her dress in the backyard. But unfortunately, their romance was interrupted by the arrival of French, who had brought Gordon's money with him. Without wasting any more time, they hurriedly left the place. They had barely driven a few yards when they came across Gordon's bodyguard that French had beaten. For revenge, the bodyguard even brought 2 of his friends. French and Sue could have run off pretty easily if they wanted to, but their fighting spirit seemed to prevent them from doing so. Instead, they chose to take on the 3 people's challenges. After having a very tiring day, the 2 of them then decided to have lunch together before heading back to their homes. French only spends time at home sleeping. He really needed a break because he and Sue had to go to Tommy to give him the money they had collected yesterday the next day. Here, Tommy tells them that Harvey has paid off all his debts. They only spoke briefly because Tommy took French and Sue to meet his friend Barbosa. Barbosa apparently wants to ask Tommy's help to catch Conor Mulligan, the Irishman who has taken away his money. While Barbosa was explaining to them, his fiancée, Amanda, suddenly asked permission to leave, as if she didn't want to hear their conversation. Out of curiosity, Tommy then asked the amount of money stolen, but Barbosa seemed to avoid the question. Tommy didn't force him to answer his question. Instead, he explains how the system works and how it applies rankings to its targets. If the target was ranked 10th, they would only be given a warning, but if the target was rank 1, they would be beaten to death. Without hesitation, Barbosa chose the rank 1 package, then handed over the $20,000 fee and the address of the place where Conor had last worked. Armed with this information, French and Sue rushed to Conor's place of work, a bar. But before they had time to ask about Conor, the bar owner rudely asked them to leave because the bar was closed. Sue took a toothpick and stabbed it into the bar owner's eye without saying much. A barman, who was also a bodyguard, suddenly appeared not long after. But unexpectedly, he recognized Sue, and since he knew how badass Sue was, he wouldn't mess with him. But on the other hand, he didn't know French at all, and because of that, he immediately beat him. As French and the barmaid fight, Sue interrogates the barman about Conor's whereabouts. But it turned out that Conor had quit working there a month ago, and according to the bar owner, he was a nice guy. Whatever Barbosa said about Conor, it was all a lie. But of course, Sue didn't trust the bar owner, and so he tortured him until the bar owner opened his mouth. He gave Sue the address of Tim, Conor's former roommate. The bar owner was sure Tim would know where Conor was. Since they had nothing else to do at the bar, Sue then took French over to Tim's apartment. French apparently managed to turn things around in his fight. Before leaving, he dealt the final blow that knocked the barman down. Sue and French were able to find Tim at his apartment, but just like the bar owner, Tim also told them that Conor was a nice person and even had a child. It wasn't Conor they had to beat up, it was Barbosa, but French and Sue still couldn't believe what they heard. French even threatened to crack Tim's head if he wouldn't tell him where Conor was. Fearing for his life, Tim finally tells them that Conor has moved to a place called Topanga with a woman, Sandy. French and Sue got back in the car and headed for Conor's new address. Arriving at their destination, French knocked on Conor's door very gently, but as soon as Conor's son opened the door, he headbutted him. Then they beat the poor child until blood was pouring from his nose. The commotion they made finally made Sandy come. They then tried to interrogate her about Conor, but again, they got nothing but information that Conor was a good, innocent man. In fact, according to Sandy, it was Amanda who knew Conor's whereabouts. After getting that information, they went home to rest. They decided to follow Amanda wherever she went the next day until she finally came upon an apartment building. But interestingly, she was talking to someone over the intercom, yelling and calling whoever she was talking to an Irish bastard. Suspecting that Amanda was talking to Conor, Sue and French went straight to her, threatening to leak her and Conor's relationship to Barbosa. Realizing that she was no longer keeping her secret, she finally told them Conor's apartment number. French and Sue then rushed to Conor's apartment. Amanda wasn't lying. Conor had opened the door for them himself. But while they were interrogating Conor to find out if he really stole Barbosa's money, a little girl, who was none other than Conor's daughter, suddenly appeared. The look of concern was clearly visible on her face when she saw her father being treated harshly by two strangers. Not wanting his daughter to worry, Conor lied to her, saying that French and Sue were friends. Sue followed up on Conor's lie, said the three of them were playing hide and seek, and then invited her to play with them. She innocently believed Sue's words and then walked away to hide. After she left, Sue immediately asked Conor why Barbosa was after him. It turns out that Conor used to work at Barbosa's club. There, he fell in love with a dancer named Crystal. Sometime later, they started a relationship until finally, Crystal became pregnant with him. But Barbosa, who also had a crush on Crystal, couldn't accept that she was pregnant by another man. Driven by anger, he stabbed her even though she was still pregnant at the time. Conor tries to save her and takes her to the hospital. In the end, Crystal's life could not be saved, even though she gave birth to a daughter before her death. And it was the child that Sue and French had just seen. Hearing Conor's story, French decided to tell him to get out of town immediately, but Sue didn't approve of his decision because he feared they'd get in trouble if they just let Conor go. They then argued with each other, defending their arguments, until French said they would be nothing but cold-blooded killers if they handed Conor over to Barbosa. French's words seemed to bring Sue back to his senses, and he told Conor to take his daughter away. After that, French and Sue went downstairs, where they were reunited with Amanda. She reveals to them that they have fallen into Barbosa's trap. Barbosa plans to kill Conor and make them both scapegoats. And to make matters worse, Barbosa was now in the elevator, heading for Conor's apartment. Realizing Conor's life was in danger, they hurried back up. But when they were upstairs, they found Barbosa's men had filled the floor. French realized there was no way they could take on an armed enemy head-on, especially when Sue seemed hesitant. Therefore, he devised a plan and told Sue. They then waited for the right time for the enemy to pass, and when the moment came, they immediately ambushed them, beat them repeatedly until they passed out, and snatched their weapons. Using that weapon, they then opened fire on Barbosa's men. Amid the chaos, they entered Conor's room. They told him to leave immediately with his daughter while the two of them would stay in place to protect them. Moments later, just after Conor had left, two of Barbosa's men entered the room. Gunfights are unavoidable, and after a few moments of exchanging shots, French and Sue killed them. Thinking the situation was safe, they came out from behind their cover. But their decision was fatal because, at that moment, three of Barbosa's men came into the room and shot them. Sue was shot several times, causing him to fall down helplessly. French was shot too, but he was luckier than Sue because he still managed to escape. As soon as the gunfight stopped, Barbosa came out of hiding to finish Sue, but luckily, Tommy suddenly appeared and stopped him. It turned out that he had realized that Barbosa had set them up all this time, and without any further hesitation, he shot Barbosa dead. Moments later, the police finally arrived at the scene. Meanwhile, a badly injured French gets back into his car and falls unconscious. At the end of the film, Conor and his daughter are having dinner together. Thanks to French and Sue's sacrifices, they could finally live normal family life without fearing for their lives. So, the moral we can learn from this film is that everyone has sins committed in life, but that doesn't mean we have to give up our humanity. No matter how dark our past is, we can still change for the better.